Hey, today we're using somatic psych theory to talk about the basics of fawning, people-pleasing, trauma, and healing. This is part of an organized series where I'm helping people connect with their intuitions, map out their nervous systems, have a healthier relationship with their bodies, and even community build using somatic psych theory. This chapter is covering times when two parts of your autonomic nervous system have to collaborate to help you handle emotionally complicated situations. So far, I talked about play, which is way more complicated than it sounds, freezing, and this video is going to cover fawning. Oh yeah, if this doesn't quite make sense to you, please look at my older videos. I break down the basics of the autonomic nervous system and what each part does individually. This chapter is a little more complicated because we're talking about those individual parts working together. So what happens in situations where it's not acceptable to fight or flight, freezing isn't helping you get to safety, and you can't quite shut down, at least not yet? So your autonomic nervous system is receiving signs of danger from the environment, and it needs to make its choice in seconds before you're even aware of what's going on. And it decides this time that fawning is the safest option for you. When your autonomic nervous system decides that fawning is the best course of action, then your sympathetic nervous system and your dorsal vagus collaborate to help you do whatever you need to do to smooth things over, even imitating unconsciously the ventral vagus's calm social state for your immediate survival. You have your sympathetic nervous system here that's giving you the energy to motivate you and move you to safety. And you have your dorsal vagus, which is helping you pause enough so you can figure out what you need to do to make someone happy so that you can avoid immediate danger and be safe. Here are some examples of what fawning can look like, and I'll pause here so you can screenshot or whatever. All right, cool, that's enough. People-pleasing describes the behaviors involved in appeasing someone and centering their needs and wants above yours for a purpose. Now, the fawning survival response does involve people-pleasing behaviors, unconsciously, involuntarily, for the purpose of your immediate safety and survival. Your conscious mind is not actively thinking, oh, let me people please right now. This is the unconscious decision-making, that decision-making that happens in seconds that your autonomic nervous system is doing for your immediate survival. So that all said, as we know, people-pleasing behaviors are not always involuntary or unconscious. There are definitely situations where people are intentionally, on purpose, engaging in people-pleasing behaviors for things like maintaining power, keeping up social expectations, avoiding accountability, etc. So do you see how that's not the same? One, fawning, is an involuntary, unconscious survival response that is made in seconds, right? And the other is a set of behaviors, people-pleasing, is a set of behaviors that can be used by the autonomic nervous system for your immediate survival, but it also can be used on purpose, consciously, as a tool in social situations. Fawning specifically results from chronic, repeated, complex traumas like child abuse and neglect, living under systemic oppressions, etc. Fawning as a survival strategy usually starts in childhood. The child is trying to find safety in unsafe or unstable situations by appeasing the usually neglectful or abusive adults in their lives in order to avoid more abuse or neglect. And children aren't the only people who fawn. Marginalized people also engage in fawning in order to survive under systemic oppressions. Systemic oppressions create the environment for abuse and neglect to thrive, even on an interpersonal level in our private and community relationships. And also, systemic oppressions create the environment for fawning as a trauma response to be passed down and modeled across generations for our collective survival. Two things can be true at the same time. There were probably times in your life where you had to please and appease someone with more power than you in order to avoid being harmed, abused, neglected, killed, etc. And also, fawning becomes a problem when you find yourself engaging in behaviors again and again that don't serve you and actually go against your values. Remember, chronic complex trauma does damage the vagal brake, and it reduces your nervous system's ability to stay flexible enough to manage emotions without going into survival mode. What that can look like is relatively small conflicts and moments of discomfort can feel like huge crises to a nervous system that's been through repeated complex trauma. So someone can feel quickly overwhelmed and their nervous system could step in and decide to fawn when maybe another strategy would have been more beneficial in the long run. The strategies that have worked for us in the past to help us survive don't always fit our current lifestyles and situations. Part of accountability, part of healing is first nurturing an awareness of your old patterns of behavior. And then, because awareness is just the first step, checking in on these old patterns of behavior to see if they still help you and help the people in your life. And if they don't, right? If they harm you, if they harm people in your life, then that is the time to make the moves to change. Your past doesn't have to be your future. Long-term use of fawning as a survival response can lead to the following. I'll pause so you can screenshot if you need to. All right, that's good, right? Learning your nervous system and being in relationship with your body is essential. You need to be able to be aware of what your nervous system is doing when you're triggered into a fawn state, and you need to recognize what being in a fawn state feels like in your body so that you can break these old patterns of behavior. Somatic work changes neural pathways. It changes how your brain communicates in the body and with the body. And also, somatic work builds brain tissue so you can change and you can move differently in the world over time with practice. If this video was helpful to you, please consider joining my private practices $3 Patreon so I can provide more free somatic therapy to more Black people. Thank you so much.